Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strange Coordinates, a show where we use brands as compass points to lead us to fascinating stories. I'm Idon Sarakaya.
And I'm Topher Burns, along with our partner Robert. Idon and I lead an agency called Territorial. We help brands to find their place in the world. But we are not the only ones who love brands. On Stranger Coordinates, we focus on a specific theme and we bring a traveling companion along with us on the journey.
Today, we're exploring worlds a little outside of the usual business and corporations we tend to talk about on Strange Coordinates. We're going to be looking for insights about brands and industries that don't usually get thought of as brand savvy.
And we're not going on this journey alone. Joining us is someone who is a storyteller at heart. For the past decade, her work in the financial and insurance industries has told the stories of brands enabling people to live their possibilities by securing basic, essential elements of life. She now uses her marketing and operations acumen for the benefits of dogs, cats, and bunnies as a fractional CMO to the Humane Society. Please welcome to the show, Kelly Colbert. Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
We're so excited to have you here, Kelly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure is mine.
Now, Kelly, you and I go a long way back, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're super excited to chat with you today is that, you and I know each other from way back in the early Facebook days when, the world of social seemed full of possibilities, and you were working at Anthem to help, bring that into what you guys were offering to your consumers and to your customers. And you've traveled a long way from early days of social and insurance to working in, with the Humane Society. I would love if maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what that journey has been like for you in terms of what led you along the path to where you are now.
Yeah, I'm so pleased to be talking to you today because it made me think a little bit about my career. And the way I'm seeing it right now is there are three distinct chapters. I started out in the startup world, in the tech world. I went out to Silicon Valley to find my fortune. I'm not sure I did that, but I learned so much. And I learned so much about accountability because at that time in Silicon Valley, it was all about finding funding. It was all about going public. It was all about each person in the organization truly pulling their weight. So that was the lesson I kind of culled from the startup culture. I went from there to corporate America. I worked in insurance and I worked in banking. What I learned there is I learned about survival, and I say that with a little bit of a laugh, but it really was about playing the long game in corporate America. You worked with lots of different kinds of people. It wasn't the volatile, innovative atmosphere that I was used to in the startup world. We were tied to a stock price. We were tied to delivering on shareholder value. The upside for me as a marketer is because I had a big budget, I got to work with the best and the brightest. So I really leaned on my agency partners for that spark of innovation, that spark of creativity to bring us to our goals. And then from there, I've joined the nonprofit world. And funny enough, I would say that the nonprofit world is more akin to the startup world than the corporate world. There's a feeling of innovation. There's a feeling of accountability. There's a feeling of making every single dollar count. People have a shared purpose in a truly authentic way that I saw in Silicon Valley and I see in the nonprofit world today. And that might be a little bit missing from the corporate world. And that's really because I think sometimes we have to write our mission statements to please our investors in corporate, as opposed to really reflecting our mission. So 3 distinct chapters. Gosh, each of those chapters, I have gained a lot of friends and a lot of experience. But I'm in early days of nonprofit, so much more to learn there.
It's an interesting phase, and when anybody joins a new industry or a new vertical, you do have kind of an opportunity to take a look at it from a fresh perspective that folks inside of it, don't necessarily see. I think one of the things I tend to think of is for folks who I know who work in nonprofits, sometimes they do kind of complain about feeling like, oh, you know, we aren't as innovative, or so we feel so stuck by tradition and things like that. It's interesting. What are the components that, from an outsider's perspective, you look at and say, like, no, there really is innovation. There really is, a type of startup energy to what's happening in this space. What are some of the things that to you stick out?
Well, I think I'm very lucky. The board, I take my direction from our board of directors. And luckily, I have a really dynamic board of directors. And they feel like they've done a terrific job to date, but they're very open and very receptive to new ideas. I will say that, there's a corporate tradition of sort of being the smartest person in the room, right? And sort of wowing people with your expertise. I would say in the startup world, there's you're a bit more mannerly, because people have been saving lives or coming up with a cure before you join the organization. So they've been doing something right. So you have to be quite careful, and make sure that your comments are laser focused on what is being done well, and perhaps some, small opportunities for improvement. But again, I think that what was great about the board that I work for, is great about the board that I work for, is they wanted all of me. They knew that I was making a transition from corporate. I'm sure they've been very forgiving if I've been a little bit too bold at times, but they thought that the experience that I brought to bear, made sense for them. So they took all of me, all my foibles as well.
What are some of the things that at the Humane Society, we were talking a little bit about what is it as you're framing kind of like the world of corporate versus the world of startups and of nonprofits. What are some of the things that at the Humane Society you have kind of had a chance to look at and say, like, gosh, like the corporate world could really learn from this type of ethos, or taking these types of perspectives in terms of how they approach things like brand experience, relationship with the, people who they want to talk to, that sort of thing?
It's interesting. In the corporate world, there was a brand department. I was a part of that in my last job at US Bank. And it was very much sort of owned by the brand team, right? And if you were getting conversations in other departments, there was this sort of hierarchy. Well, the brand team that we know best because we wrote the guidelines. And I don't know if that actually is true. At the Humane Society, it assumed that there's a co-created brand. Our brand is the sum of our volunteers. Actually, 98% of our staffing is provided by volunteers. So we very much give volunteers a lot of credit, a lot of respect, and we consider them co-creators of our brand. We have a board of directors, and they're quite important. They're a very active board. And then we have our staff members, and they're there every single day on the front lines. So I don't think we have that distinctive notion that brand is owned by a brand team, but more that brand is kind of co-created by a number of different teams. The other piece that I think that's different and interesting at the Humane Society is, I'm used to turf wars in corporate America. They're very normal and very natural. What's really awesome about the Humane Society is that our purpose is to save dogs, cats, and bunnies. And people return to that charter when they make decisions. And I think because it's so meaningful, because it's so central, because we all understand it, it becomes the arbiter of any disagreement. And maybe, corporate brand and mission statements, if they were more thoughtfully created, maybe they could serve a similar purpose. I don't think it's just because we save dogs, cats, and bunnies that we have an easier way forward. I think it's because we have a mission statement that truly reflects our charter.
It's a really interesting reflection of purpose-driven brands, which became a buzzword and kind of a tired buzzword even 5 years ago. And the reason was because in the beginning, I think maybe there was an actual recognition that brands like the Humane Society have enabled themselves to make decisions and to operate as a group because of this shared sense of purpose. But purpose-driven brands soon became rainbow washing at Target, where, as long as the SKUs were selling quickly, then they were happy to put LGBT on anything. But then the moment that they got some blowback, they just eliminated all of they just treated it like a product instead of treating it like a brand mission. And so you're kind of emphasizing that a shared sense of purpose that is connected to a set of stakeholders that isn't just your investors, but is the people who you work with, and also the things that you want to make happen in the world, that allows for faster decision making, a more inclusive process, and probably a more resonant brand when you're able to sort of tell the story out loud. Would you say that is how you're noticing things?
I absolutely agree with what you just said, Toper, and I think you're right. I think the word purpose kind of became rather lofty
Mm,
and became almost synonymous with goodwill. And not every brand kind of is in that space.
yeah.
But the notion of purpose, everyone being very clear on what our goals are. We can come up with lots of euphemisms, but being crystal clear on what we need to accomplish, I think that is what I'm seeing in the nonprofit world. That's really, really helps us do things just more quickly and with less acrimony, to be quite honest.
Mm,
I also think it was a little bit of like the emphasis on culture in the 2010s, right? There was a lot of focus on our mission, and our purpose directly influences our company culture. And when we have happier employees who are more invested in the work, then we get more out of them. Like, I wonder, it's a little bit of like a capitalist dynamic that kind of took over that sentiment. So right there with you, Topher. And I think that's really exciting to hear that there are industries where even the volunteers are feeling agency in the mission of the organization. Like, that's why people end up volunteering, right? Is because they care. That's why they're giving their time, their money, whatever it might be.
Yeah. And I think sometimes in companies or in nonprofits, the marketing team might be afraid to ask too many questions, to solicit too much input, because then it's like, oh no, now we actually have to do it.
mm,
And I definitely was a victim of that in corporate America. It was like, oh gosh, if I ask the product team, they're gonna give me a lot of pretend marketing, and then how am I going to, put it in a very diplomatic way, not do what they said, and all those things. I think I got caught in a loop there. What I found at the Humane Society is we have all these really, really smart people who are volunteering because they love animals. And what I've started to do is get to know those people better and solicit and ask them what they think. And by and large, people people have given me less versus more. They've been very circumspect um, in the sort of, if you will, advice they've given me. And I've gotten some very, very powerful nuggets. So I think that's just something to think about. Is sometimes, there's that old, isn't that the old lawyer question? Don't ever ask a question you don't know the answer to.
yes.
I think we sometimes practice that in corporate America, and maybe we need to do that a little bit less. Maybe we need to be unafraid of the answers, because I think then we're opening up lines of communication, and again, co-creating the brand and having people feel truly invested.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are excellent points. One of the things I was thinking about as you were talking about this idea of co-creation and also inclusion, is, the ability of a brand like the Humane Society to attract people because of that idea of purpose. And I know that animal welfare, animal well-being is something that has been a passion point for you for quite some time, both in terms of your own personal life, causes that you support, But I think based on when we were catching up most recently, I think it's also kind of determined even where you live and how you live, and that has led you to connect to some interesting people as well. You were talking with me about what you've been learning about farmers recently. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about kind of like what brought you to, move from the urbane, corporate world into a space where you're interacting with, folks who are on the more agricultural side of things.
So I live in the Hudson Valley, and before that, I lived in New York City for a few decades. And as I've become a bigger part of this community here, I've gotten to know, the different farmers. And I learned some tremendous lessons about customer service that seem very fundamental, but I don't know that they're practiced widely enough in corporate America or frankly in nonprofit. For example, I had an early morning a couple of weeks ago, and I finished what I was doing, and I needed to go to a couple of the farms to buy some fruits and vegetables. And I went to this one farm that I know well, and I drove in, and then I realized I was really rather early, and they opened up at 8 o'clock. So I backed out, went to a second farm, and went into the second farm to get some vegetables. And I realized I was a little bit early, and I sort of peeked in. And this farmer waved me in with enthusiasm. She was in the midst of restocking vegetables. And I said, gosh, I'm sorry. I know you have a long day ahead and I'm a bit early. And she said, I'm here anyway. Why wouldn't I invite you in? Come on in. Don't look at the mess. And we're very happy to see you, and we welcome you. So I kind of took a minute there, and I thought, gosh, how many times in retail have we not seen that happen? Where people are sort of like, keeping to a very particular clock and not welcoming in their customer. Furthermore, later on in the day, I went to Farm 1 that I had sort of just walked, kind of driven into and driven out of. And the farmer, another woman farmer said to me, Kelly, why did you leave? I was here. I saw you and you didn't have to leave. And I was like, well, I was 40 minutes before you opened. She said, I'm a farmer. I'm always here. And it created this affinity. Let's think about them as brands. This wonderful affinity for both of these brands. I felt welcome. I felt encouraged. I felt even more respectful of them and their hours, right? Because they were encouraging me to, and they were valuing me as a customer. So I think there's some basics there that I will definitely reflect on, in the future.
I was recently talking with somebody on another podcast, and he had done a little bit of digging on me, which I was surprised by. But he was like, "You're a gardener, right?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And he asked me, "What do you think you've learned about gardening that has influenced your idea of brand strategy?" And that was a really interesting conversation. It makes me think about the conversation that we're having now, because you're talking about what I think we can, if anybody has spent any time around farmers or farms or even just in gardening, there's a difference between the way we think of in a Western traditional industrialized context, which is like things take the time that they need to take. We're going to decide that this is going to be done in 4 weeks. We're going to decide that we're going to be open at 9. And we kind of impose limits on interactions or on relationships because of those things. Whereas the farming attitude that you're describing is kind of like things take the time they take and you're here when you're here. And that's kind of an interesting foreign concept to us, especially in the business or corporate world, where it's kind of like, well, you had a deadline. Like the deadline's the deadline, but what you're describing is a space that allows for a more natural type of interaction, which is, meeting people where they are, having conversations with them when they need that. I think that's a really inspiring type of attitude to take that could have a lot of different implications for how a brand interacts with people and how a business decides to operate.
Yeah. And showing true value for your customers. really embracing your customers and telling them that they are of tremendous benefit to you. Like they were unabashed in that. And that was what I walked away with. If they weren't sort of diffident, like, oh, well, you're here, you can come in. They were, please come in. Because guess what? I am part of their business, I'm part of their business ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I think being unabashed in that way, I think is incredibly important. I think brands need to do more of that, not just kind of send a lot of CRM driven emails, but find out more about their customer and show true respect for them.
It's a form of community building, and there's a brand of personal care items that I use called Soft Services, and I actually think they have some of the best emails of any brand that I deal with, and they are often very personalized. They are very quick to send me codes of the products that I buy over and over again. I recently was even invited to do a product testing for them because they knew that I was a loyal customer. And it makes me feel like, even though I don't really, they're D2C, like I'm buying it online, but it's still very much creating kind of a community ethos. I always read their emails because they're always having interesting perspectives. They did a whole thing about what to do when you have a sunburn, and it was beyond just like their product line, but talking about why it's so harmful to get a sunburn, why it's so bad for you, all these kinds of things, and then talked about sun protection and aftercare. And so I think it's all a form of community building and partnership. It's meeting the humans where the humans are. And I think this also you can see in the work that especially indie agencies like Territorial also take to the way that we approach work, which is making sure that we're working in concert with a client and slowly moving towards what we believe to be a milestone, but also allowing the work to kind of unfold at those key moments to actually progress and move forward. And there's so many other examples of this happening, but I think community building continues to be such a crucial thing, both in the online digital, like the personal care example I was giving, but also in what you were describing with the farmers in the real life ecosystem as well.
It's a fascinating idea of community, and kind of what you talked about, Idon, calls into the fact that community has kind of been commoditized in a lot of ways. That it's like the whole point of community is actually just engagement, which is actually just like click to purchase rate, like
pay to play
yeah,
communities, right?
yeah. Does that line up, Kelly, with what you're kind of thinking about, that you're seeing kind of in the difference between corporate America and agricultural America?
It does line up, but it also made me think a lot about in my last role at U.S. Bank. We have a full roster of agencies, and as you know, agencies and clients become very intertwined, right? Those relationships are, as Topher and I know, they last decades. And there was a point after when I left U.S. Bank, I thought of rejoining an agency. And I really started to talk to a lot of different clients. And I believe that right now, independent agencies have an almost unfair advantage vis-a-vis what clients are thinking. And I'll tell you why. I've worked with large network agencies and have tremendous respect for the work they do and their ability to run global pieces of business. But truthfully, I don't know that many. There are a very distinct number of global brands, right, that require such scale.
Right.
For the most part, most of my friends in marketing, they have domestic, brands that need agency help. And I think independent shops have an unfair advantage right now because they are able to pivot to the time we're in, when CEOs and boards are leaning in and they're really scrutinizing costs. We've been talking for decades about that, but I think it's now more than ever. I think there's a tradition in large network agencies to bring dozens of people to meetings or show the dozens of people that have created a piece of work. And I think that's the antithesis of what corporate executives and boards are actually looking for. And I see these large agencies just hamstrung by their own tradition, truthfully. And they're not able to lean in and be scrappy and send two people and have two people on a phone call with a senior person. And actually, I've had agencies say to me, "Oh, can we get your CMO on the phone?" And one day I actually did that. I had a CMO that I had a very good relationship with. And I said to her, please be on this call with our agency. They really want to see your face. They want to hear your voice. You defer to me, which is, wonderful, but they really need some CMO time. And she came on the call and she kind of gave them what they wanted, right? She observed their work, et cetera, et cetera. We all hung up. She called me. The first thing she said to me is, why were there 14 people on that call? And I hated it. I hated to hear that was, but she was responsible for P&L. She heard 2 or 3 people's voices. Yeah. And she naturally said, why were there another 11 people on that call? And I know the answer. The answer is to be on that call. There's a certain stature in that agency that, there's also to be on that call. They're training some of their junior folks, right? So they're really listening to learn. Yeah. I understand that as well. And that has never bothered me. But it's, I think large agencies have a really hard time doing things with small stealth teams. And I think small stealth teams are the way to be right now. I think there's another piece, which is right now brands are looking to co-create. I think co-create is our word of the day here in this podcast, but I think that brands are looking to co-create with their agency partners. Yeah. They don't necessarily want to receive a PowerPoint or a big idea with a bow on it. They want the beginning of a provocation of an idea, and they want to work with their smart agency partners and bring it to fruition. So I do think independent agencies right now have an unfair advantage. I think they're more able to kind of lean into this time.
I mean, hallelujah. We totally agree. I don't know if you were going to say something that was less ecclesiastical.
I totally agree, but I was going to say that this also relates back to purpose, right? When you're on a team of 20 people and you're somebody sitting somewhere in the middle of the hierarchy and you're not really owning the call, but you're not really the person who's trying to learn a ton because you're just starting out your career, you also might be the person coasting in the middle, right? And so when you have this smaller team, you also have more agency because you're also responsible for doing the work, you're paying attention, you're invested. It's an opportunity to make your mark. It's an opportunity to exercise your brain. So it's another form of how that purpose, I think, comes back into the work itself.
I really appreciate the conversation that you both have had about this subject because honestly, I didn't think that I was going to picture myself in the world of kind of indie agency as almost running a farm stand. And now I kind of feel like I do and that feels really cool. That doesn't feel like small or, limiting. That actually feels like, oh, I get to, exactly as Aidan was pointing out, I get to focus on developing relationships with the people that I work with. I get to work on creating projects that have the time they need to actually get to the answers that we're looking for. So I get to kind of let the work dictate the schedules rather than let the business schedules dictate the work. And I get to kind of focus on the relationships. I think those are really great points that I hadn't pictured going into this conversation. So I appreciate you both kind of leading it in that way.
I love it. I'm also going to take it away. I think it's a great metaphor for the work that we do.
Yeah. Let's change up the vibe though. We've had a very collegial conversation, but I think now Aidan's job is to put Kelly, you and I through our paces a little bit.
So I had a lot of fun researching nonprofit and campaigns. So all of these are kind of in the brand campaign world, but also kind of with nonprofits. And I'm really excited for Billy to link a bunch of these in the show notes because I was going down a bit of a rabbit hole looking at all these campaigns. So anyway, We are ready to get into off-brand, where I'm going to ask three brand-related questions connected to our theme, as I just mentioned. Some will be multiple choice, some will be fill in the blank. I can always give a hint. You are not being scored. So let's get into it, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So which of the following statements are true about the iconic 2-minute 2006 ASPCA commercial that featured Sarah McLachlan? A, it originally aired during the Super Bowl and featured rescue cats only. B, the song Angel used in the ad was specifically written for the ASPCA. C, the ad helped raise over 30 million in its first year. Or D, Sarah McLachlan filmed the commercial with her own pets at home. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Which is an insane amount of money to raise in 1 year. I mean, this is why it became kind of the biggest nonprofit campaign that I think all of us think about. Interestingly, Sarah McLachlan was being directed to be more emotional, so she had to do multiple takes and refused to watch the commercial for a number of years after because she was like, I don't want to return to that. It makes me so
Oh,
sad, which is quite sweet. But it was not her dogs, it was all shelter dogs that were featured in the video.
I knew it wasn't B because wasn't Angel also in that like Nicolas Cage movie?
It was from 1997, apparently.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a commercial. It's interesting that you would bring that one up because that ASPCA commercial, ASPCA does amazing work. Um, that commercial is one we all avoid, right? It makes us feel terrible. And the board and I talk about that emotion a lot. Like, what is our, what is our sort of our central go-to emotion? And for us, it's joy. We want people to realize that our shelter is a home. It's a temporary home, the dogs, cats, and bunnies that are in transition. But we want to elicit kind of a feeling of joy and really encourage people who are adopters that they can sort of add to the joy of this animal. So I think there's, right, there's like sort of old school, how do you motivate someone to take action? One is fear and one is happiness or joy. And we've chosen joy, but obviously the ASPCA is doing great work and fear has worked for them or sadness has worked for them.
I like the connection of joy. I feel like I adopted my dog 3 years ago, and I have never felt that way ever in my life. It was the best feeling. And he came from a bit of a traumatic pre coming into our home. So he's had a little bit of trauma, and it's taken him almost 3 years, but 2 years in, he started smiling, and I'll never forget that feeling. It was just
Oh,
like, oh, he finally found a home. He feels good. So I like that joy. Okay, well, some of these other ones are not very joyful. Um, since its 2003 launch, the Movember Foundation has raised over blank dollars globally to support initiatives related to prostate cancer, testicular cancer, mental health, and suicide prevention. I actually didn't know that they supported those last two, which is pretty interesting. This one's a fill in the blank.
oh. Is there a range that Kelly has to land in? Like we're looking for
It's a
within,
big number.
okay. But like within $1,000, within
Uh,
$5,000, like what
I think give us a guess, and we'll be close. And not, it's not 5,000. We're talking big, a lot of zeros. So millions plus
I'm going to say 100 million because why not?
$1 billion.
what a whoa.
Okay.
I was thinking in the that same denomination, Kelly, like hundreds of 1 billion is incredible. That's a lot of mustaches.
That's a lot of mustaches, and it's because it's been global. So they're operating now. They have official charities essentially in 20 countries worldwide. They've funded more than 1,200 projects globally. It was originally started in Australia by a group of friends. And then, of course, all the, co-branded sponsors that are also occurring. I feel like we've seen a lot of that in the past 5 years or so, like New Balance, LinkedIn apparently is one. Um, 1 billion since 2003 is pretty incredible.
But that gets back to the theme of community and peer-to-peer that we were talking about. I feel like the Movember campaign was really something that you encountered the first time in your office. There
Yeah.
was some person, right, who was doing that thing, and then it became very, very personal, and it was like, okay, me too, as opposed to an entity solely kind of owning it and putting out a campaign around it. So I think there's a lesson to be learned there too. If you can come up with a great idea and you could put it in the hands of people, it will spread like wildfire.
The Ice Bucket Challenge for ALS, I think, is another one of like grassroots community building and participation, which is now just like proliferated into many other things. I think there's an oil one going on right now.
You'd like
seen
dunk
that?
yourself in oil?
I think it's a environmental statement.
Oh God, that kind of oil. I was picturing olive oil.
I don't think they use like petroleum, but I think it is like something with environmental impact. We'll have to take a look at that. But I think I saw that.
I feel like Kelly, I inflicted Movember disaster on you at some point in our working relationship. I am not a mustache grower. I can grow I can grow mutton chops, I can grow goatees, but like this area is a nightmare. And I've definitely, I think, inflicted it on you in the past.
You have.
I look like a budget hamburglar. It's just a terrible, terrible look. It's awful.
But but that's a sort of another piece of this too, as we were talking about joy and fear being, motivators, particularly for nonprofits. The fact that Movember, really obviously very weighty topic, right? Prostate cancer. And yet so many people that participated in it, right? They knew that there was a silliness to their execution of it, and they did it anyway, and people were able to sort of laugh while kind of participating in this sort of weighty endeavor.
Yeah,
Totally. That's a great point. All right, here's our third question. It's going to be a multiple choice. So, which PETA campaign featured celebrities posing nude to protest the use of animal fur in fashion? It was called A, Fur Free Forever, B, We'd Rather Go Naked Than Wear Fur, C, Animal Skin is a Sin, D, Strip for the Animals.
I'm going to say B.
That is correct.
Okay.
Sorry, the last two really get me. I think animal skin is a sin is pretty funny. But no, it was We'd Rather Go Naked Than Wear Fur. Tons of famous people participated. I think I remember the Dennis Rodman ones most specifically, kind of randomly, but Christy Turlington, Melissa Etheridge.
In that particular PETA campaign, Christy Turlington was able to combine what we knew her for, right, modeling, to her purpose. And it sort of created such dimension around her and made her kind of even more than a supermodel, if there is such a thing. But this sort of supermodel who really believes in things. And it almost, I think I'm taking this too far, but became a launching point for what she did after, right? Which is, I believe, didn't she have some sort of a yoga brand? But I think I always thought of Chrissy Turlington after that as somebody who had a certain gravitas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of, having your own point of view and a little bit of gravitas, we are now asking for your point of view, Kelly, as we move into the next component and final piece of our Stranger Coordinates episode. And we call this segment Omnipotent Brand Manager. So you have received a promotion to be the most powerful brand manager in the history of creation for the span of a single project. You can do anything. You can work with any company, any brand. What brand would you work with, and what would you do?
And you know what? I have an odd answer. I don't know that there's a brand. I will tell you what I love to do. I love commoditized categories.
I spent my
entire career in insurance and banking, and that's really health and wealth, which I think are kind of fundamentally important to humans. I think there's something incredibly sexy about CPG, right? I love products. As a consumer, I love products. I love packaging. I love promises. I love all that stuff. But as a marketer, I love to work in commoditized categories because what really interests me is finding a point of difference. Working hard, particularly in insurance and banking, right? It's really easy to say, oh gosh, it's all the same. What's the difference? But finding that one sort of, that feature that is shared by all of the brands in the category and amplifying and saying something different. And I'll give you an example. When I was at Anthem, we had a product we called NurseLine. Every single insurance company in our category had a very similar feature that they offered to consumers. So no one talked about it because it wasn't different. We did some market research and we found that NurseLine was really near and dear to our customers. So what we decided to do, and there were lots of people within the company who said, are you crazy? You're spending advertising dollars on this feature that everyone else has. But we spoke about it differently. We actually put one of our nurses on camera. We replicated what our members, our insurance members were experiencing in that moment. We talked about those moments, those dark moments when you don't have an answer. It's the middle of the night, et cetera, et cetera. And the commercial was a humongous hit. All of the brand metrics that we tracked increased. And it was, again, a feature that every single company had. It wasn't a point of difference, but we did it differently. So I would, given this opportunity, this fictional opportunity to be CMO, I would find a commoditized category like banking, like insurance, and then work with my market research team to find something that is really, really important to our members and just express it creatively differently.
Yeah. That's really great.
That's cool. And what I love too is you're just like it just shows that you're such a classic, like not just a marketer, but like a marketing geek, like you are excited about digging into, an actual marketing challenge and really, getting your hands dirty and finding a way to kind of do something different.
Yeah. The moment my career changed for the better was the moment when I realized that our market research team, our insights team, were my friends, not my foes. Because for a while there, I put them in the same category as my core legal team, which are people to run fast away from, right? Because they were the no people. They were the ones who were going to poke holes in things people.
Yeah.
And the truth is, once I really, really developed a deep relationship with our insights team, the work that I was able to help produce became exponentially better because it was loaded with insights. I looked to the market research team to poke holes before the consumer did.
Mm-hmm.
And the work just started to kind of score off the charts, based on our brand scorecards. So I would say to any marketer, make friends with your market research team. They really, really can elevate the quality of your work.
Yes, totally. And on that note, we have covered so much ground today. Everything from indie agencies are very similar to your local farm stand, purpose and mission-driven work and what that really means in the nonprofit space versus how we often experience it in corporate America. And some of the most interesting, nonprofit or large-scale nonprofit campaigns from the past couple of decades. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kelly. It's been a real pleasure.
And thank everybody else for joining us as well. Talk about co-creation, Kelly. You nominated that as the term of the episode, and I heartily agree. So we're very grateful that you joined us for this conversation.
Thank you very much.
And for anybody listening at home, we appreciate you being here. To learn more about Territorial and how we help brands find their place in the world, go to our website, weareterritorial.com. Also, if you're interested in territorial tidbits, our episodes are now being posted with little clips on TikTok. So for you TikTokers out there, join us there. We've got awesome little quick snackable bites of fascinating moments from these episodes. I know we'll be posting some chunks from these conversations as well there. So check us out on TikTok. We are Strange Coordinates. We'll see you there. Or join us on LinkedIn. Check us out on YouTube. Find us on Anita Podcasts. But thank you, everybody, for listening along. Kelly, thank you again. And we're looking forward to seeing what people think about what we've uncovered today.